Well, my hope would be that President Biden has persuaded the Israeli Prime Minister to start winding down their operations and to do everything in their power to avoid an all-out war and thereby guarantee some kind of stability in the region. It's clear that a humanitarian crisis of the most terrible nature is underway in Gaza, and the hardships in Lebanon are very considerable. And I think the attention of the world, in general, but Israel in particular, should be focused on how we deal with those not turning into a situation where thousands of people starve to death and yet more tens of thousands lose their lives, as so many already have.
Now, Biden expressed concern over the humanitarian situation in Gaza during, of course, his call with Netanyahu. How might this urgency influence Israel's operation decisions in the short term, and what role do you think the international community should play in addressing humanitarian issues while navigating the complexities of the military conflict?
Well, in truth, the humanitarian situation is not going to be properly resolved until some kind of permanent solution is found to the governance of Gaza. And one of the most depressing things about this conflict so far is that we hear very little talk about that. However hard the Israeli government are pressed, they don't seem to have any credible answers to the question of how Gaza in particular, but also the West Bank going forward, are going to be governed. And I think unless those questions are resolved, then the situation in both those territories is going to continue to be absolutely awful. I think the responsibility of the international community is to make clear that resolving those issues is absolutely at the centre of preventing this becoming an absolute tragedy. And clearly, it's an uncomfortable set of considerations for Israel. I well understand that. Whatever is the solution, it's unlikely to be one that is comfortable for them, but that's what will be necessary. And unfortunately, I think that the prospect of permanent war represents a kind of comfort zone for some members of the Israeli government, and the international community really needs to move them away from that with every power, both soft and hard, that can be mustered.
Now, Mr. Tim, both leaders have discussed the need for diplomatic initiatives to release detainees held by Hamas. In your view, what are the potential avenues for effective diplomacy in this context, and how can the U.S. leverage its relationship with Israel to facilitate the progress on this front?
Well, the release of the hostages is absolutely critical. To be perfectly honest, the best thing that could happen would be for Hamas to say that they recognise that keeping people as they have for over a year now is a terrible thing to have done, and to immediately release them. I think for the Israelis, the release of the hostages should be a greater priority. I think they should recognise that for many, many people in Israel, seeing their loved ones and members of their extended family returned home as safely as is possible after such a length of time is of enormous importance. Clearly, the United States is Israel's most important ally, and I think we have to accept that they are possibly making different arguments in private to those that they're making in public. But I think pressing Israel to engage in whatever way it can to try and ensure the return of the hostages is critical.
Indeed. With Iran's recent missile attacks prompting this high-level communication, how do you assess Iran's influence on the current tensions, particularly here in the region, and what strategies could the U.S. and its allies employ to counter Iran's activities while maintaining commitment to diplomatic engagement?
Well, Iran clearly presents a very major challenge, and there's no question that it has been funding proxies to make war on Israel. My sense is, their proxies, Hezbollah, have taken, some very significant and severe military setbacks, and the response has not been quite as one might have expected, perhaps suggesting that Iran isn't as bullish as some had initially feared. I think, with this slight lull in hostilities, that is an opportunity to try and find diplomatic means to reduce tension in the region and to try and find a settlement whereby Iran is not presenting itself as a permanent hostile actor to Israel, and we can move to a position where countries are able to live in peace alongside each other.
Mm-hmm. As Biden and Netanyahu agree to maintain close communication amidst all these crises, what do you foresee as the long-term impact on US-Israel relations, particularly concerning military aid, intelligence sharing, and collaborative defense initiatives, considering these escalating tensions?
I think one of the consequences of the ongoing conflict has been a worldwide revulsion with some of the actions of the Israeli government. And I think the absolute certainty that Israel felt about its alliance with the United States and with other Western powers actually is being progressively eroded. And one senses, even for many people who have a deep instinctive desire to support Israel and its government, that actions that have taken place since the 7th of October have really damaged those relationships. What's also clear is that there is within the United States a significant body of people who identify more strongly with the struggles of the Palestinian people, and that not only are they vocal on the streets, but they are increasingly electorally active and important in some of the swing states who will decide the next presidency of the United States. Right. So I think for so long as this conflict goes on, the more Israel is damaging its international standing, both with its closest allies and with those who are further from its orbit.